Joining us now to remember Coach Albert, three of the greatest quarterbacks in Towson history, Ron Meehan, Dan Crowley, and Chris Goetz. And we'll go in order of appearance in their careers. Let's start with you, Ron. When did you first meet Coach A, and what made you decide that you wanted to play football for him at Towson?
I first met Coach A at Woodlawn High School on the sideline after a game. I think we played Sparrows Point or Towson, one of those Baltimore County schools. But just the way that Coach approached me and my dad, my dad was my mentor back when we were 16, 17 years old. And just the way Coach came off, it kind of reminded me of my dad. Just his stature, the way he spoke, he looked at me, and what he told me, what he believed in right then and there. He only saw me play for, 60 minutes, against a football team here, but he knew nothing about my character, knew nothing about my, the person I am. But just the way I handled myself during that game was enough to get, I guess, to keep his interest and to have the invite to Towson.
Chris, you came along in the 80s to play for Coach Albert. How did you first meet him, and what made you decide that you wanted to play for him?
Well, Coach A came up with Gordy to watch me play a basketball game after the football season. I'm from New Jersey, so they only had film on me. They did not come and watch a game of me playing or so. So when they came up, got the opportunity to meet Gordy and Phil for the very first time after the game, and with the discussion of them really interested in me coming to Towson, which at that point I was excited just to have the opportunity to get a chance to play college football.
And then in the 90s, we have Mr. Crowley. And Dan, you were at DeMatha. How did you first meet Coach A?
Sure, that's interesting hearing Goetzy talk about his introduction because like Goetz, I was not introduced to anybody from Towson during my football season. It really wasn't until February, 2 weeks prior to signing day in February of 1991 that Coach Jay Robinson called me up and asked if I'd like to take a visit to Towson. So it was 2 weekends prior to signing day that I took my official visit, met Coach Albert. My parents met me on Sunday morning of that visit. And, obviously being from Prince George's County, the Washington, D.C. WCAC conference, although we're in proximity close to Towson, I didn't know much about that university and had never met Coach Albert, had never met any of the coaches. But that visit that weekend, meeting Coach Albert with my parents sitting next to me, it was all about family. And I really knew that weekend that was where I had to go play football for the next 4 years.
Ron, excuse me. You and I were at Towson together, and you and I broadcast together for many years. And I've got to say, there have been so many times where I will talk to you, and I feel like I'm hearing Phil Albert. Obviously, he was a tremendous influence in your life.
Absolutely, Spiro. I mean, being 18 years old, coming into Towson, you leave mom and dad, you're on your own, you're in a dorm room, and you think you get the run of the town, Truth be told, I was recruited to play football for Towson. The education came a little tougher for me, but I finally did finish. I did walk across stage, so I did finally finish. But football was the reason that brought me to Towson. But just every day, Coach A, he always talked about, if you take it from the practice field to the course, you're going to win. You have to practice, or the range or the practice course, and you take it from there to the course, you'll be fine. I've done that in my life today. What he's taught me on all of those practice fields, all of those lessons, all those teaching moments, I've brought them into my life, and I utilize them in how I raise my children, how I run the business that I manage right now. He was a great mentor, and today I use some of those, some of the teaching moments that Coach, shared with me in my life today.
And Chris, coming in as a quarterback, and Coach Albert obviously was identified more with the offensive side of the football team than he was with the defensive side. You as the quarterback, I mean, you guys had probably a closer relationship than any other position, correct?
Absolutely. All of us will say the same thing. There's one thing about being the quarterback on the team is you have extra meetings on top of extra meetings, and you are with Coach Albert and with the offensive coordinator and learning everything about that offense. And the one thing about Coach Albert was even when he was upset with you, he always talked to you in a human way to really emphasize that everything can get better all the time. And I think Coach Albert was somebody that always pushed you to be the best person that you could be, no matter what you are trying to accomplish.
And Dan, you were in an odd situation because you come in, you're a quarterback with a cannon for an arm, and here you are your freshman year, and all of a sudden the team decides they're going to run the wishbone or the option. And what were you thinking at that point? And did you say anything to Coach Albert about it? Like, this isn't what I signed up for.
I can assure you that I never said anything to Coach Albert about that. No. As I mentioned, that second week in February when Coach Robinson came down to pick me up, that was the happiest time of my life, right? To get an opportunity to go to college and on a scholarship and continue a dream to continue playing football. That's all it was about to me. When we started that season, I was in that locker room. I was in that quarterback meeting with Gary Worthington. I thought the world of Gary Worthington. I was 168 pounds and 5'10". Gary Worthington was like 220 pounds and 5'10", right? I was in a whole different world just learning, and to have a guy like Coach Albert, the ultimate teacher, every day was a learning experience. He let you know that. He let you know it was about learning first, football second, right? And I just cherished that. So, there were other coaches, there were other players. Those are the ones that you rely on. I was really fortunate my second year, that sophomore season. I think Goetz was finishing up his undergrad and was a coach that fall in 1992. So I was really fortunate to have Goetz on the sidelines during practice and on game day. As a guy that just wore the pads and that jersey just a couple years prior, and those are the moments that you really, really fall back on and learn from, is to have somebody in your ear like that. But Coach Albert, man, the ultimate teacher, mentor, and somebody that I'll always remember learning from.
All right, guys, final question. Ron, when I say Phil Albert, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Like we've spoken here before, a mentor, a leader, just a guy, a down-to-earth guy who wanted to, he wanted you to feel better when you left his parents than when you got in front of him. We talked about, Phil Albert and what he meant to you and things like that. But, this guy, for all the time that we spent together, put Ron Meehan's life in the right direction. And I have him to thank, Mom and Dad as well. But he, really influenced me a lot to put me in the right direction and made me the man I am today.
Chris, how about you? What will you remember most about Coach Albert?
Love. He just brought out love for everybody on that team, whether, knuckleheads to, the good-hearted people that, are all part of the team. But he always was there for everybody on that team, good and bad, and always emphasize family first, and just his overwhelming of love, I think, is what I always felt. Like Ron was saying, and he definitely guided so many of us in the right direction at that time in our life to become better people, not through football, but, just coming across the way he came across. That's the way I felt about him.
And Dan, what will you remember most about Coach A?
Sure. Well, your question was what comes to mind when you say his name, and Chris took the words right out of my mouth. It's families first. Family first is the first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question. And again, I go back to 1991 and 18 years old, my recruiting visit. I felt like I was at home. I felt like he was part of my family, and that's the way he ran a day to day. And I only got to play for the guy for one fall, right? 3 months is about it. You know, he stepped away after that 91 season. But to come to Towson and have that perspective, I was very fortunate to go through high school with that same mentality. And some of my best friends are from high school. My absolute best friends are from those 4 years in college. And until today, I was so fortunate to play for 10 years after college. And I approached every single day, every practice, as those dudes in that locker room were part of the family. And that's my immediate family. I stay true to that. You know, my parents will tell you the same thing. You know, I brought my players home to visit my family first.
You know, unlike any other coach, I played a lot of sports like you guys do. I didn't want to disappoint that man. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't want to let him down. And I think we all feel the same way, because he believed in us. And whether it was in the classroom, whether it was on a Thursday night uptown, whether it was Saturday night under lights, I'd never want to disappoint that man.
Guys, I appreciate it. I wish we could have met under better circumstances. Always great to see you. And, you know, three of the legends of Towson football right here, and talking about probably the legend of Towson football in Phil Albert.